Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We'll be learning today Mitzvah Hashem Daf Nun Amid Beis and part of Nun Aleph Amid Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Tainus, and we pick up today on Nun Amid Aleph in Siman Taf Kuf Ayin Vav, near the bottom, 3 lines off the bottom with Sif Ches. So we have been discussing different calamities for which Klal Yisrael would hold a tainus, where they would fast and blow shofar. Says the Mechaber in Sif Ches. V'chein similarly, al yerakain v'al hashidafain. If there are different type of blights that affect the tfuah, it affects the grain, so it's affecting the food supply. Yerakain v'shidafain are 2 different types of blight. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah Katan Chav Zayin, where he defines them. Yerakain v'hashidafain. Yerakain hu tfuah shehchsifu paneha. Yerakain is a type of blight where the grain becomes pale. V'shidafain hu rach shemer kazera min hatfuah. And a shidafain is a powerful wind that blows the grain off of the stalks and it destroys the grain. V'shiyuroi. Now, how much of this has to occur? Excuse me. How much tfuah has to become blighted in order for Bezdin to be geyser a tainus on the tzibbur? V'shiyurai kemalai pi hatanur. It's the amount of grain that would fill the opening of the oven. What exactly does that mean? Pirush, tfuah, an amount of grain, sharoi lasois pas, with which you would be able to make enough bread, kemalai pi tanur, so that the loaves would fill up the opening of the oven. And here again, we have a machlokes precisely what that means. Uva Gemara mistapik, the Gemara questions, Imratza loymar kikisui hatanur, does it mean that enough loaves of bread that it will... Now it's interesting, the words of the Mishnah Berurah are kikisui hatanur, which means literally the lid of the oven. But the Gemara... Oh, I didn't spot this before, but I didn't. The Gemara in Tainus on Chav Beis Amid Beis, the Gemara says, Kamalei Tanur Tfuah, Kikisuya de Tanura, doesn't mean like the covering of the oven. The way I understand the Gemara in Titus is the Gemara's question is like this. There are 2 ways you could understand Molei Pi Hatanur. Kemolei Pi Hatanur means that the loaves would stop up the opening of the oven. And the way the Gemara questions this, the Gemara says, doesn't mean that you're going to insert loaves into the oven all the way inside, all the way into the bottom. Their oven's more vertical. So it doesn't mean that you're going to fill up the oven from the bottom to the top, or it doesn't mean that you're going to stick loaves of bread right inside the opening. They used to stick the loaves onto the walls of the oven. So it doesn't mean the row of loaves that you stick right inside the opening, or does it mean from the bottom of the tanur all the way up to the top? Now, in the words of the Mishnah Berurah, if I read it in the Mishnah Berurah, the Gemara mistapik imratza loymar kikisoi hatanur doesn't mean like the lid of the tanur, which I guess is a way of saying just to fill up the top opening of the tanur, or does it mean kishurais halechem, the rows of loaves have dveikim b'fi hatanur ze'etzel zeh that are stuck one next to the other? Inami zelamayla mizeh, or does it mean one of top of the other? So it seems that the Mishnah Berurah is throwing out at me 3 options. One is, it means kikisoy hatanur, where the lid of the oven goes. So that would mean you fill up the entire space of the opening of the oven the same way a lid would. A lid closes up the opening. So an amount of grain that would make enough loaves to block up the opening of the tanur. That's option number 1. That's kikisei hatanur. Oi, kishuray salecha madveke b'fi hatanur ze'etzel zeh. Or does it mean the loaves that you stick on the walls of the oven right inside of the oven? And then one more choice, inami zeh l'mayla mizeh, or does it mean loaves of bread going all the way from the bottom of the oven, one on top of the other, and filling up the entire volume of the oven? Okay. So let's go back to Sivches in the Mechaber. V'chein al yirakin v'ashidafain mishehischa b'tfua. Once this type of blight begins to strike the tfua, afilu lo hischel ela b'makom echad. Even if you're only finding the blight in one area, but again, it was enough. It struck enough tfua of this measurement of pi hatanor. Kemaloi pi hatanor. Misanen, you would fast to masrian and blow shofar. Fa'afilu harechaykem, and even places distant from where the blight struck would already have to fast and blow shofar. Rakshiyu boisei afrachia, as long as they're part of the same kingdom. Says the Mishnah Berurah Kan Chavches boisei afrachia hi malchus, and afrachia is a kingdom. Fadafka bezeshi himakam halachos. Over here, even the distant places have to fast because these type of blights tend to travel. If it's something that doesn't travel, then you don't have to blow shofar. Anis bilvad, you would only fast. Sif Yud Beis, like we're going to see later on in Sif Yud Beis. Okay, bottom line in the Shulchan Aruch Sif Tes. V'chein al ha'arbe v'hechasil. So too you would blow shofar and you would fast if you are being struck by various types of locust. V'chein al ha'arbe v'hechasil. Even if you only witness one set of wings of these type of locusts in the entire Eretz Yisrael, and even if they have not yet caused any harm to the produce of the land, still misanin, you fast to masriyan alein and you blow shofar, because arba and chasel are so destructive. Once you see one, it means there's going to be more, and once you have them, they are certainly going to do damage. Val haguvai, and on another species of locust, pirish min arbe, this is some species of locust. Bechol shehu, also if you see even a minute amount of guvai, you have to fast and blow shofar. Aval al hechagav, but on a less dangerous species called chagav, ein misanan alav, you do not fast, v'lo masriyan, and you do not blow shofar. Elazayak and bilvad, you just daven to the Rebbeinu Shalom that the tfuah should not come to harm. V'achshav, and nowadays, says the Mechaber, she'enon makirin minin halalu, we are not wise to the differences between these different types of locusts. Al kula masriyan, we would blow shofar on all of them. Siv Yud, v'chein al hamazonos. Similarly, you would be geyser at tainus and you would blow shofar on problems affecting parnasa. Mazonos over here does not strictly mean food. It means parnasa. Like the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, Mezonosav shaladam tzuvin loy Rosh Hashanah ad Rosh Hashanah, a person's mezonos is decreed from Rosh Hashanah. He gets the gzera for parnasa for the year. So mezonos does not only mean food, it means your parnasa. So the Mechaber says here in Sif Yud v'chein al mezonos, for problems affecting parnasa, you would also be geyser at tainus and blow shofar. Ketzad, what would the case of this be? Harei shehuzlu dvarim shel schara sharoiv chaye anche oisa ha'ir mehem. If something happens and the price of the business that most people in the city are in plunges, kigoin, for example, klei pishtin bebavel. In Bavel, you had a lot of flax dealers. If the price of flax collapses, it affects the parnasa of everybody in Bavel. V'yayin v'shemen be'eretz Yisrael, or wine and oil, which were primary sources of income in Eretz Yisrael. If the price of wine and oil plummets in Eretz Yisrael, v'nismaet hamasa v'hamaton, and business is affected to the extent where a businessman, a merchant, has to sell an amount of product that's worth 10 coins, Beshisha for 6 coins, so he's taking a 4-coin loss. Harezu tzaras tzibbur, this is a tzara that affects the entire tzibbur, umasriyan aleha, and we blow shofar and fast. And over here in the Mechaber says, ubeshabbos zayakim aleha. For this, we would even cry out to the Rebbeinu Shalom on Shabbos. Avalein teikin aleha b'Shabbos, however, we would not blow shofar on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah Kan Chavtes, Harezu tzaras tzibbur. This is a tzara that affects the entire tzibbur. This is the livelihood of the entire tzibbur is threatened. This is definitely a tzaras tzibbur, umisanin. And the verse says you certainly have to fast. We would cry out even on Shabbos, the Mechaber said, Bepeh, verbally, loymar anenu. We would say the tefillah of anenu even on Shabbos for such a calamity. Siv Yud Aleph, v'chein ala motor. Similarly, we would be geyser at tinus and cry out and blow shofar for rain. Ketzad, what does this mean? Harei sherabu alehem gishamim. Previously, we spoke about what happens if there's a drought and you don't have enough rain. Over here, we're speaking about the opposite. Ketzad. Harei sherabu alehem gishamim ashe yitzeru lahem. If there's too much rain and it's causing a tremendous tzara, it's causing flooding, harei elu mispalalim alehem. We have to be mispal to the Rabbeinu Shalom that the Rabbeinu Shalom should lessen the rainfall. She'en lechat tzara yesera mizu. The Mechaber says there's no worse tzara than this. Shahabatim noiflim, where there's so much rain and flooding that it causes the houses to collapse. V'nimtzu batehem kivrehem, and chas v'chalila, a person's house becomes his tomb. His house collapses on him and he becomes entombed in his collapsed home. Let's remember that, generally speaking, they didn't have stone houses. They had whole houses built out of straw, built out of mud, and if there was too much flooding, the whole house becomes undermined and it collapses. And therefore, says the Mechaber, Uberetz Yisrael, in Eretz Yisrael, ein mispalelin al roiv hagishamim. In Eretz Yisrael, we're not mispal to the Rabbeinu Shalom because we have too much rain. Why? Mipnei shehi Eretz Harim, because Eretz Yisrael is a mountainous region. Ubateihem benuyim ba'avonim, and we all know about Jerusalem's stone. The houses are stone houses, and therefore they're not undermined by the rain. V'roiv hagishamim toiva lahem, and quite the opposite, plentiful rainfall is a mile in Eretz Yisrael. Because Eretz Yisrael, you need to fill up the Kinneret, you need to fill up the water cisterns, you need your water supply to be refreshed. So a lot of rain is a mile in Eretz Yisrael, and it's not such a problem in Eretz Yisrael because it won't cause the homes to collapse. Ve'ein misanim lahaver hatova, and we're not going to decree a fast to ask the Rabbeinu Shalom to take away a tova. Plentiful water is a tova. Va'akshav, however, the Mechaber does say, the Mechaber who lived in Eretz Yisrael, and I believed he lived in Tzfas, Va'akshav b'Tzfas, says the Mechaber nowadays in Tzfas, Mitzuyim ma'polos batim mipnei hagishamim. It is somewhat common for homes to collapse because of too much rain, umispalalim aleim, and therefore even in Tzfas, in Eretz Yisrael, the Mechaber said it is appropriate to daven if you have too much rainfall. Sif Yud Beis. Kol ir sheyesh bat tzara mikol elu. Any city that is afflicted with any one of these type of tsaras that we have delineated so far. Oisa ha'ir mis'aneh, that city that's being afflicted fasts. V'zayakin batfila, and they cry out to the Rabbeinu Shalom in their davening. Umischanenim, and they reach out to the Rabbeinu Shalom with all sorts of supplications. Umasriyan b'shofar, and they blow shofar, ad shetavar hatzara, until the tzara that they're being afflicted by goes away. The kol sevivai seha, and the surrounding cities that are not themselves being afflicted by the tzara, but they're neighbors to the afflicted city, misanois, they fast because of imay anoichi b'tzara. Like we saw yesterday, they have to be mishtatif, they have to join in with the tzara of their neighboring city. Avaloi masriais, however, they do not blow shofar. Aval mevaksham alehem rachamim. However, they certainly have to be mispal for their neighboring city, and they have to beseech the Rabbeinu Shalom that the Rabbeinu Shalom should have rachmanos on them. Uvechol makayim, and in any locale, ein misanin, they don't fast, v'loi zayakim, nor do they cry out, v'loi masriyim, nor do they blow shofar, b'Shabbos v'yomtiv al shum tzara. You don't blow shofar, you don't fast, you don't cry out to the Rabbeinu Shalom on Shabbos or Yom Tov for a tzara, chutz mitzaras hamazonos, with the exception of parnasa, shezayakam aleim b'Shabbos. For that we cry out to the Rabbeinu Shalom even on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in Lamed Aleph. The chol sevivai seha, hainu ba'isa hafrachia. Again, when we speak about neighboring cities, where the neighboring cities have an obligation to be mishtatif with the tzara of their neighbor, that's so long as they're in the same kingdom. Kamasha kasav sivches, like we saw earlier in sivches, this is brought from the Magen Avraham. Now we go to Siv Yud Gimel. Says the Mechaber, Ir shehikifua anasin oinahar, a city which chas v'chalila was surrounded by troops, surrounded by marauders, ay nahar, or it's under threat of flooding. Maybe there's a river that's around the city and the river is flooding out of its banks and now the entire city is under threat of a flood. Usfina hamutarefes payam, or you have a ship that is being tossed about on the seas and it's in danger of foundering. Even an individual who finds himself running away from marauders, a listim or robbers, a ruach ra, or an individual who's under threat of a ruach ra, an evil spirit. I've seen variously that this means it means an evil spirit. It means shadim, somebody who somehow is being possessed by shadim, or somebody who's his mind, others learn his mind is maturif. Somehow mentally he's having some kind of mental fit and he's out of sorts mentally. Or another chayla that's under imminent threat. He's under threat on that very day. So I'm going to skip the parentheses for a moment. Zayakim u'mischaninim b'tfilos b'Shabbos. In these situations, we cry out and we reach out to the Rabbanu Shalom with supplications, even on Shabbos. Aval ein taikin, however, we do not blow shofar. Ela im kein taikin lekabet ha'am lazar acheim u'lahatzilam. The only time we would blow shofar on Shabbos is if a city is under siege and a city is under imminent threat and they want to blow shofar as a siren call to a neighboring town that people should come and help. That's pikuach nefesh, and that you would even blow shofar on Shabbos. Now in the parentheses over here, the Ramah says, "Olavarech ha'chayla b'Shabbos." If you want to make a mishaberach for somebody who's ill on Shabbos, ayin la'el soif siman reish peiches sif yud, where it says that you could give a bracha for a chayla who's a chayla mesukin, you could do that on Shabbos. So here in Sif Yud Gimel, the Mechaber is coming to tell us that a city that's under imminent threat of whether, or a city that's under threat from a flood or from marauders, or a ship that's in danger of foundering, or a person who's in imminent danger, in all of these cases, you could reach out and be mispal to the Rabbanu Shalom for the tzara, even on Shabbos, but you don't blow shofar. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, there is no Mishnah Berurah in Sif Yud Gimel. Okay, weiter, Sif Yud Daled. Tiniyos elu shemis anin al hatzaros. All of these tiniyos, where we're fasting for various types of tzaras and calamities, ein misanin bahem loy ubaros v'loy menikos v'loy kitanim. Expectant women, nursing women, and kitanim, and we'll have to see what we mean here by kitanim, do not fast on these tanesim. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cotton limud beis v'loy kitanim. Minor children do not fast on these tanesim. Now the Mishnah Berurah over here is coming from the Magen Avram. The Magen Avram questions the Mechaber right away. He says, why does the Mechaber have to come over here to tell me that kitanim don't fast by these tanesim? A cotton doesn't fast on Yom Kippur. So if a cotton doesn't fast on Yom Kippur, which is a tanis midaraisa, certainly he's not going to fast on these tanesim. So the Magen Avram concludes that when the Mechaber says over here that kitanim don't fast, he doesn't mean literally kitanim. He doesn't mean minor children. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. V'loy kitanim, lav davka kitanim gemurim. The Mechaber doesn't mean to address real kitanim, a boy under the age of 13 or a girl under the age of 12. Certainly they wouldn't fast. They don't fast even on Yom Kippur. Or rather, what the Mechaber means is, kol shehem pchusim mishmayne esrei l'zachar, any male child under the age of 18, v'chamesh esrei l'nekeva, or a female child under the age of 15, ein geyzerin ha-tzibbur aleim tanissim elu. The tzibbur is not geyzer any of these kinds of tanesim over a tzara on people that age. A man under the age of 18, a woman under the age of 15, is not yet seen as reaching the age of gevura. They're not yet in their full strength. And therefore, we're not geyzer a tanis on them for these kind of tanesim. Kevin she'enam tanisim kvuin. These are not permanent tanesim. They're not real bona fide tanis tzibur. And therefore, we're not geyzer, the Magen Avram says, we're not geyzer a tanis on people that age. However, the Mishnah Berurah says, "V'yeshayimim, there are those that say, Damasha amru v'loy tanim, that when the Mechaber says v'loy tanim, hainu de'ein behem mitzvahs chinuch, he really is talking about ktanim. He is talking about real ktanim. What does the Mechaber want to tell me? Certainly they're not going to fast. They don't fast even on Yom Kippur. But on Yom Kippur, there is an inyan of chinuch. By these Tanaisim, there isn't even an inyan of chinuch. The Masha'amru v'loi ketanim, when the Mechaber said that minor children don't fast by these Tanaisim, Hainu, what he means to say is, de'ein behem mitzvahs chinuch kamoi b'yom kippurim lekamon b'simen tafresh tesiv beis. You don't even have an inyan of chinuch by children by these Tanaisim. So you don't train them to fast part of the day, and as they get older to fast a little bit longer. That doesn't apply to these kind of Tanaisim. Nevertheless, says the Mishnah Berurah, Nachain, it is proper that children, if there is this type of fast on the tzibbur because of its tzara, so while the children are going to eat, they should only eat what they're required to eat for their health to maintain their well-being, but they should not go ahead and have an enjoyable meal and eat for tainuk. V'Magen Avram Kasav, the Magen Avram writes, the minig is she'ein geizrim tainus elu al prusim mishman esrei l'zachar v'chamesh esrei l'nekeva. The Magen Avram concludes that the minig is with taka not geyser this kind of tainus on a male under 18 or a female under 15. Okay. Now we go back. We left off in the middle of Sif Dalet over here in the Mechaber. Umutarim lechol balayla. By these kinds of fast days, you're allowed to eat the night before the fast. Alpha pisha and misanim l'machar. Even though you know you will be fasting during the day tomorrow, you can eat at night. Chutz b'tanias hageshamim, with the exception of the series of fasts that we discussed previously that you make when there's a lack of rainfall. If you remember, we had the tainus of Bahab, that the Talmidei Chachamim fast. We're not speaking about that. Then we have the first 3 tanesim of Bahab that the tzibbur fasts. That's only a fast during the day, not the night before. But then you have the middle 3 and the final 7. Those final 10 tanesim, the fast begins the night before. With the exception of the fast over the lack of rainfall. This we learned previously in Siman Tov Ayin Hey Sif Hey. It refers to the series of Tanesim that I just described. Now we go to Sif Tezvav. Tzibbur shahayu lehem shtei tzaros. Let's say that Tzibbur Nebuch is being afflicted by 2 tzaros at the same time. Ein mevakshim rachamim ela al achas mehem. A very interesting halacha. If the Tzibbur is being afflicted by 2 problems at once, maybe there's a drought, and at the same time that there's a drought, they're also under threat from marauding troops outside the city. So there's 2 different tzaros. Ein mevakshim rachamim ela al achas mehem. You only cry out to the Ribbono Shel Olam for rachmanus for one of them. Why is that? Tiksiv, because we find the pasuk says this in Ezra. In Ezra says, this is speaking about when Ezra was leading the exiles from Bavel back to Eretz Yisrael. So Ezra describes how on the way back, it was a dangerous journey. And Ezra says that he did not want to ask the king for troops to escort them. Why? Very interesting reason why. Because Ezra says in the pasuk that he told the Melech that they're not worried about the dangers because the Ribbono Shel Olam will take care of them. They have emunah and betachon. Now to come to the Melech and ask the Melech, we need troops to escort us, what are you talking about? You just told me that you have such great faith in the Ribbono Shel Olam, and now you want escorting troops? So Ezra said he couldn't ask for troops. He had to rely solely on the Ribbono Shel Olam. So Ezra says, the pasuk, now I'll read the pasuk that the Mechaber brings down here, Diksiv, Vanatsuma vanavaksha me'elokeinu al zois. So we fasted, and we were mispaled to the Ribbono Shel Olam. We beseeched the Ribbono Shel Olam al zois, for this tzara, for the need that we had to have a safe journey. We reached out to the Ribbono Shel Olam and we davened him that he should protect us. So that is the tzara that we davened to the Ribbono Shel Olam for. Now, from the fact that Ezra wrote in the pasuk al zois that we davened for this, the implication is that really there were 10 other things that they needed also. But Ezra said we can't daven for 10 things. We could daven for one. So he davened for what he perceived the most pressing problem. The most pressing problem was that they should be safe on their journey. So they fasted and they davened to the Rebbeinu Shalom for that. V'omrim, and the Chazal say, even though we have many different tzaros in our hearts, that's what Ezra meant when he said, we will mispal to the Rebbeinu Shalom for tzara ploinus, for that specific tzara. But we couldn't be mispal for more than that. So here we have the source that the tzibbur is only mispal for one tzara at a time. Says the Mishnah Berurah kat lamadal state tzaros, aval kishiyesh lam tzara achas. But if the tzibbur is afflicted by one tzara, yechaylim lahazkir b'tfilasam gam tzari she'avru. They can mention other tzaras that they've had in the past, and they can ask the Rebbeinu Shalom, please protect us, besides protecting us for the active tzara that we're being mispal to you now. We remember in the past we had a hunger, in the past we had disease. Please protect us from those as well. Agav tzara zu shemispal in aleh. Once they're being mispal for one active tzara, they could also be mispal for tzaras that they had in the past, that they should be protected from those happening again. But they should not be mispal for two active tzaras. Al achas mehem, they could go ahead and they could be mispal for one of them. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'im yesh chaloim b'gdolim uktanim af b'shnei minim. Let's say there are two diseases striking the tzibbur, two different sicknesses. You have one sickness that's striking the older people, and you have another sickness that's striking the younger people. Nira, the Chavetz Chaim says, it seems to him, the mutter lihispal al shteim b'yachad, that you could be mispal to the Rebbeinu Shalom for salvation for both of them. Because the Prima Gadim says you're being mispal one tefillah. You're asking the Rebbeinu Shalom to protect you from disease. So okay, there happens to be two different diseases striking two different demographics. But the tefillah that you mispal to the Rebbeinu Shalom is Rafeinu Hashem v'nei Rafei. Keep us healthy, heal us. So that's one tefillah. Says the Mechaber. And here, the Mechaber says a very interesting thing, which shows you how you have to be smart about your tefillah. Says the Mechaber, V'em yesh lehem tzaras rav v'tzaras dever. Let's say the tzibbur is being afflicted by two different problems. There's a hunger, but not only is there a hunger, there's also a dever. There's some kind of terrible plague going on where people are dying. So we just learned you could only be mispal to the Rebbeinu Shalom for one. So what are you mispal for? Are you mispal that people should stop dying? Or are you mispal that the Rebbeinu Shalom should bring you food and end the hunger? Says the Mechaber. Mevakshim rachamim al harav. Be mevakish rachamim, daven to the Rebbeinu Shalom that the Rebbeinu Shalom should end the hunger and he should give you sustenance. Why? Meshum dechiyav rachmana soiva. Because if the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to give you soiva, literally is satiety, satiety, S-A-T-I-E-T-Y, satiety. If the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to give you, he's going to satiate you. That's where the word comes from. If the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to give you satiety, where he's going to give you plentiful food, l'chaya yohiv. What's he giving it to you for? He's not giving it to you so that he can strike you dead 5 minutes later. If the Rebbeinu Shalom is giving you a bracha of soiva, he's giving it to you to keep you alive. So be mispal to the Rebbeinu Shalom, give us sustenance. Why are you giving us sustenance? To sustain us. So that one tefillah for the sustenance is also, it lies in between the lines, is also a tefillah to end the dever. If the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to give you sustenance, he's going to end the dever as well. Now we go to Sif Tezayin, final Sif in this very interesting Siman. Says the Mechaber, B'chol yoim tainis shegozer malat tzibur mipnei atzaros. Every day that there is a tainis of this type, where they're gozer a tainis on the tzibur because of a tzara, what do? How do you comport yourself on that day? Says the Mechaber, Bezdin v'hazikenim, the Bezdin and the Talmidei Chachamim, hayu yoshvim beveis hakneses, they would sit in the shul, uboitkim al maisei anshe ha'ir, and they would analyze the deeds of the people of the city. Me'achar tefillah shachris ad chatzi hayoim. They would spend half the day, from after davening until chatzos, So half the day would be spent in tefillah and then in sitting down and analyzing what's going on in the city. Why is the Rebbeinu Shalom bringing us a tzara? You have to be mefashvish b'maisim. What's going on? Umesirin hamichsholim shel averos, and they should see to it to remove the stumbling blocks of avera. To have to look and see what's going on in the city and what could we do to take away averos. Umazhirin, and they have to warn people. V'darshin, and they have to be dirish. V'chayker, they have to investigate and they have to analyze. Al balei chamas, whether there are balei chamas, are there people in the city that are taking advantage of people financially? Are there strong-armed people that are robbing people? Va'averos, and what are the averos in the city? Umafrishin oisam, and they have to talk to the people and they have to take them away from avera. So the Batei Din and the Zikanim, if there's a tzara, if there's a sickness, does this sound familiar, Rabbi Isai? What the Batei Din and the Zikanim really have to do is they have to look and they have to say, what's going on in the city? Are people doing business honestly? Are people honest in their business? What's going on? Are people comporting themselves in a proper manner? What's the level of tznius in the city? How's the dress going on in the city? Are the skirts getting too short? What's going on in the city? They have to look and they have to analyze. And when they find problems, they have to be mafresh the townfolk from the problems. Va'al balei zroya, and strong-armed people who might be taking advantage and riding herd on less powerful people. Are the powerful people, pushing down on their peers and taking advantage and oppressing people? Umashpilin oisam. And if they are, they have to bring those powerful people down. The kayotza b'dvarim elu, and other items of similar nature. So in other words, the spiritual leaders, the Rabbanim, the Batei Din, the Zikanim, they have to take a look what's going on in the city. Why is the Rebbeinu Shalom bringing a tzara? And they have to adjure the people. They can't shy away from it. They have to adjure the people to go ahead and mend their ways. That's the first half of the day. And then from that half of the day until the evening, Revi'ah Hayoim, for a quarter of that time, Kairin b'Torah, they would lane in the Torah, Umaftirin b'Navi, and they would read a maftir from the Navi. What would they read? So I saw, because it's very odd, we're talking about a quarter of the day. What kind of laning and what kind of HaTorah is going to take up a quarter of the day? It doesn't seem that we're talking about Vayechal and Dirshu Hashem B'Matzai. That's not going to take up a quarter of the day. So I saw it brought down in the Aruch HaShulchan. He says over here, Umba Kairin, what would they lane? Because of a Rambam, the Rambam writes, Soif Parak Aleph Halacha Yud Zayin in Hilchos Tainus, the Kairin in Bechukaisai. They would lane Parshas Bechukaisai, Brachos Uklalos, the Brachos of Bechukaisai and the Teichecha, the curses of Bechukaisai. Umaftirin b'Navi, and then they would lane a maftir from the Navi, B'Teichachos, they would lane the parts of Navi that give Musar to Klal Yisrael, May Inyan Hatzara, that speaks about Tsaras. So this is what they would do in the afternoon. Urevi'ah Hayoim, and then the last quarter of the day, Urevi'ah Hayoim Achroim, Mispalin Mincha, then they would daven Mincha, Umasriyim and blow shofar, Umisvadin and say vidui, V'zayakim, and cry out to the Rebbeinu Shalom, Kifi Koicham, as much as they can. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Katan Lamed Vav, Umasirin Hamech Sholim. It's the responsibility of the spiritual leaders to remove the stumbling blocks of Avera from the people. Like the pasuk says in Yeshaya, Haloi zet soim ev charehu, we chose to have a fast day, pateh chartu bois resha, to remove the bindings, to remove the what's the word I'm looking for? The yoke of evil. What's the point of the tainus? The tainus is to take away Averis. V'ayim b'magen Avram, the Chavetz Chaim says, take a look at the Magen Avram, Shetama, who wonders, Lama ein anu noyagin kain. Why don't we do this nowadays? Haloizehu ikar tainus. This is the main point of the tainus, ayin sham. And I think this is brought down again in the Aruch HaShulchan. Thought I saw it here. 1 second. He says, "Umasha einon loisim kain." This that we don't do this. Mishum de'ein biyadeinu limchais ba'aver avreir ki yadua. He says we don't. It's not in our hands. We don't have the ability to be moicha, to protest the ovrei avera. 1 second. I'll bring down the Magen Avram. Sorry, I didn't take a quick look at it beforehand. Let me just see if I could quickly see the Magen Avram here. Sifkat and Yud Beis. Tamani lama einoisid kain bizmanenu. Why don't we do this nowadays? V'yadua shezek ra'tainus kimavur b'yishayis v'ilches v'gemara v'mishnah perik beis the tainus. No, he doesn't say. The Magen Avram does not expound on it. I thought the Magen Avram maybe expounds on it, but he does not. Yeah. But that's the lashon of Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan says, unfortunately, ein biyadeinu limchais ba'aver avera. I don't know. It's not on me. But sometimes I do feel that the tzibbur could use a little bit more of hearing of hearing that the mikshal of avera has to be removed, especially when we see such tsaras nebuch. But I'm not from the Bezdin and I'm not from the Zikanim. So I guess I leave it to bigger people than me. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Lamud Zayin, Umasriyan, we blow shofar, Toz Sefer. The Chavetz Chaim says that the addition of the word Umasriyan over here at the end of Sifteh Zayin, where the Mechaber says that we blow shofar, is really a Toz Sefer. The Gam B'Shachar is Masriyan. It sounds like you're only blowing shofar in the last quarter of the day by Mincha. The Gam B'Shachar is Masriyan. We blow shofar in the morning too. But Tzarech Laimar Mischanenim, what it should say is Mischanenim, that we reach out to the Rebbeinu Shalom with supplications by Mincha. Okay, so this concludes Siman Tov Kuf Ayin Vav. Very, very fascinating Siman. I think the greatest takeaway for us from Siman Tov Kuf Ayin Vav, since this doesn't seem to be so negay nowadays, we don't have anybody being geyser tanesim really, but the simple takeaway is that when you see that the tzibbur is being afflicted by tzara, you have to take it, you have to be meisim alev, you have to take it seriously, you have to realize where the tzaras come from. The tzaras come from the Rebbeinu Shalom, and the salvation comes from the Rebbeinu Shalom. And we need to understand that if the Rebbeinu Shalom is bringing tzaras, it's because of our shortcomings. It's because of our averis, and we need to be mispalel. We need to be mispalel, Rabbi Isai. We need to daven. We need to ask the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's not just enough to have in your mind, oh, the Rebbeinu Shalom takes care of everything. No. When you go to daven, you have to speak to the Rebbeinu Shalom. You have to ask the Rebbeinu Shalom to protect you. You have to ask the Rebbeinu Shalom to bring refuah to those people who are ill. You have to ask the Rebbeinu Shalom to give parnasa. You have to be mispal to the Rebbeinu Shalom. You have to reach out to him. And also, you have to do tshuva. Even if, like I say, it's not in my hands to be moicha the tzibur, but I could give teichacha to myself. Each person knows that he has shortcomings, and each person knows, like the pasuk says, nige libai. Every person knows what the shortcomings that he has, the spiritual shortcomings that he's afflicted with. So, if you can't affect everybody else, you have to at least affect yourself. You have to look into yourself and see what could you do tshuva on. You have to improve yourself. Okay, now let's go to Siman Tov Kuf Ayin Zayin, and let's see if we can make at least a little bit of a dent on Daf Nun Aleph Amud Aleph. Says the Mechaber, Tov Kuf Ayin Zayin, Im Nisrabu Agishamim, if there's a tremendous amount of rain, Ad Shemetashtishem Akarka, so that the soil is being eroded, and now you will not be able to plant crops. Eich misnahagim, how should we comport ourselves? Ubay sif echad, and here we have one rather lengthy sif. Says the Mechaber, B'chol makom, in every region, Roiv gishamim metashtishem hakarka, if a tremendous amount of rainfall is eroding the soil, umaynim hamacharesha, and is preventing us from plowing and planting crops, masriim, we blow shofar, umevakshim rachamim, and we beseech the Rabbeinu Shalom for rachmanos. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cotton aleph, b'chol makom. You do this everywhere. Pirish afilu eretz harim, even if it's a mountainous region. Shariba yagashamim hula taivasa, which we just said earlier in the shir. A place like Eretz Yisrael, a lot of rain is a benefit. We don't worry about it washing away the homes because the homes are stone, and we need the rainfall for a sufficient water supply. Still in all, if it's an amount of rain that's eroding the soil, now you're not going to be able to have sustenance. You're not going to be able to plant food. So therefore, afilu eretz harim, even in a mountainous region, sheriba yagishamim hula taivasa, where plentiful rainfall seems to be a bracha, mikamakim, nevertheless, in metashtashim, if it's eroding the soil, then you have to be mispal. The kol shekenimu eretz mitzula, certainly if it's a wet area, Sheriba yagishamim hula kalkala, where a lot of rainfall is going to make tremendous problems, bevadai tamid masriyan al roiva geshamim, then we would always fast and blow shofar on too much rain. If the erosion of the soil is preventing us from plowing and planting crops, it doesn't have to mean just that it makes the field muddy and now you can't plow because the ground will not hold a furrow. That's what it means, but it could also be that it's washing away the soil. And if it washes away the topsoil, now you don't have anything to plant in. You can't plant in the subsoil. You need the substrata is not good for planting. You need the topsoil for the planting. Masriyan is cut gimel blow shofar midasasam, from the fact that he writes this in a general way. You blow shofar. Mashba dedaitoi sheyistayig bazek seder tiny samavur besimen tavkov ayin hey v'ayin bebeis Yosef. From the fact that the Mechaber does not give the details of the Seder HaTorah, the order of how you should fast, he just says Masriyan. The Chavetz Chaim says he assumes that means that you should follow the same Seder that we learned earlier when it comes to when you do not have enough rainfall. First you have the 3 Tanaisim for the Tamei Chachamim, then Bahab for the tzibbur, then a more stringent Bahab, then 7 Tanaisim. That's what it sounds like. You should follow the Seder of Tavkuf Ayin Hey. Continues the Shulchan Aruch at the top of Nun Aleph Amud Aleph. V'ima'inyan nechbaz, if the situation is very urgent, ve'in penai lahasriya keseder shar tainiyos, you don't have time to be geyser a tainus of Bahab, fast Monday, Thursday, Monday, and then another tainus of Bahab. No, there's a terribly urgent problem right now. We need to fast today, we need to fast tomorrow, we need to fast the next day. If it's an urgent situation, and we can't follow the Seder of Bahab, etc., that we normally follow. Ein geizrin by tainus al tzibbur, then you do not decree a tainus at all. Because a tainus, a fast, is no longer an eitzah. Because the tzibbur cannot fast one day after another, after another, after another. So if you don't have time for a seder of tainus, of Bahab, then you don't do a tainus. Then a tainus is not an eitzah. Ella, rather, what do? Masriyan b'chol yom u'b'chol tefillah. You blow shofar every day by every davening. U'b'hasra b'peh dai. And you go ahead and you mispal verbally. V'im hayechidim roitzim lehisanos. If individuals, if Talmidei Chachamim want to fast, Rashom heim b'kach, it is okay, it's proper for them to fast, u'b'hasra sapeh, and to daven with bepeh, to daven verbally. Tahainu ba'anenu avinu anenu, that means the piyut of anenu avinu anenu. Omer, and then you say, Yehi ratzon l'fanecha Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Aviseinu. Hashem, it should be your will. Sheyichbishu rachamecha es kascha, that your rachmanus, your mercy, should overwhelm your anger. V'yagolu rachamecha al midaisecha, and your rachmanus should be revealed over and above all of your other tendencies. V'tisnaigim banecha b'midas rachamim, and you should comport yourself with your children with mercy. V'sikanes lehem lifnim mishuras adin, and you should act with them in a way that's even beyond strict din. Uvetuvach ha'agadol, and in your great goodness, rachem aleim, you should have rachmanis on them. She'ein paranos bala olam el b'shvil Yisrael, because we recognize that punishment only comes to the world because of Klal Yisrael, because of their averis. V'heim amcha, and they're your nation, v'nachlascha, and your inheritance. Asher yitzeisa me'eretz Mitzrayim, who you took them out of Mitzrayim. V'einam yechalim l'kabel loy roiv ra, and they're not able to accept too much evil, too much calamity. V'loy roiv taiva, and it's also not good for them to have too much taiva. Hishpata aleim roiv taiva, einam yechalim l'kabel. You gave them too much taiva, and it led them astray. They weren't able to be makabelit. Ka'asta aleim, you become angry with them. Einam yechalim l'kabel, they can't accept your kas. Yiratzon sheyeh revach ba'olam, it should be your will that you should bring revach, you should bring ease and plentifulness and calmness to the world. Uzechar rachamecha, and you should remember your rachmanis. What a beautiful tefillah, and that's what we need for the Rebbeinu Shalom. We need the Rebbeinu Shalom to bring a ruach, a shefa of toiv and of revach to the world. The world should come back to a time of peace and tranquility. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Ice Cotton Dalad, Nechpaz, if the situation is very urgent, Pirish etzarech lehisanis ritzufais. We can't do a fast Monday, Thursday, Monday. We got to fast days straight. There's danger presenting itself every day. Like a city that's under siege. What are we going to do? Fast Monday and then wait till Thursday? There's imminent danger. Or anything of that nature. So we can't do it Tanis Bahab. But on the other hand, you can't be geyser on the tzibbur that they should fast every day. So now fasting is not an eitzah, and we don't decree a tanis at all. If there are individuals, Talmidei Chachamim, who want to fast, even many days straight, and they're not afraid that they're going to get sick and become dependent on other people, they can. You should daven the piyut of Anenu. In the Ramah and the Torah and the Darkei Moshe, it is implied that this means that after Shemona Esrei you should recite the beautiful piyut of Anenu, b'derech Aleph Beis, like the Anenu that we say in Slichus. Anenu Avinu Anenu, Anenu Bareinu Anenu, Anenu Ga'aleinu Anenu, Anenu Darshenu Anenu. So we say Anenu with different types of praises to the Rebbeinu Shalom in the Seder of the Aleph Beis. But the Chavetz Chaim says, V'loi Risi Naig Kain. However, I never saw anybody do this. Ela haminig b'medina seinu. The minig in our regions is Shashliach Tzibbur Omer Ritzu Yizeh b'Shemei Tefillah, that the Shliach Tzibbur says it in Shemei Tefillah Kishiyesh Harbi Gishamim, when there is too much rain. Okay, we come to the end of Siman Tov Kuf Ayin Zayin. We'll pick up next time with Siman Tov Kuf Ayin Ches. I think we constantly picking up a little ground, which is a good thing. Baruch Hashem. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua's refuahs and parnasa to all those in need. A special wish of a refuah shalema to our friend Sheva Zalman Ben Mesha, and to Yisrael Tzvi Ben Ruchama Edel Roiza, and to Menachem Aryeh Ben Dini Yehudis. They should have a refuah shalema b'say shar chali Yisrael. Everyone have a wonderful day. Be well.